Ma'am, step away from the door and show me identification. The command reached Monica Hayes before the key even turned in the lock, sharp enough to stop the rain from feeling soft. It was 10:43 on a Thursday night in Arlington, Virginia, and the quiet street behind her looked like every polished suburb that pretended nothing ugly could happen beneath porch lights. Wet leaves clung to the brick walkway. A grocery bag hung from Monica's left wrist, the paper handles softened by drizzle, carrying a salad she had bought too late for dinner and a bottle of sparkling water she would probably forget to open. In her right hand, her house key rested between two fingers, already lined up with the brass lock on the dark blue front door she had painted herself last spring. Monica was 39, a black woman in a camel coat damp at the shoulders, her hair pulled into a low bun, her black leather work bag resting against her hip with the heavy tiredness of files that could not sleep just because she needed to. She turned slowly. Officer Brent Collins stood at the bottom of the porch steps, a white officer in a dark rain jacket, his flashlight angled low but bright enough to silver the puddles around his shoes. Behind him, Officer Luke Ramsey waited near the sidewalk, younger, quieter, with his body camera glowing beneath the edge of his jacket. The red recording light blinked once, then again, small and patient in the rain. Monica looked from the officers to her own front door, then back again. "This is my home," she said, calm but not soft. Brent's expression did not move. "We received a call about a suspicious person at this address." A lamp came on across the street. Behind a curtain, a shape shifted and disappeared. Monica felt the old familiar weight settle in her chest. Not surprise, not even anger yet, just the exhaustion of being asked to prove she belonged in a place where her name was on the deed, the utility bill, the mailbox, the garden permit taped inside the kitchen drawer. She had spent the day in a federal office where people lowered their voices when she entered conference rooms, where case files crossed her desk because the government trusted her judgment, where every sentence she wrote could move investigations, careers, and entire institutions. But here, under her own porch light, with rain gathering on her collar and cold food digging into her wrist, she was being measured by a stranger's suspicion. "What is the legal basis for demanding identification while I am standing at my own door?" Monica asked. Luke's eyes lifted at the wording. Brent stepped one foot onto the first porch step. "The basis is that I asked." The doorbell camera beside Monica's shoulder blinked blue, recording the porch, the key, the officers, the grocery bag, the stillness between them. Monica placed her thumb lightly against the key, but did not turn it. "Officer," she said, looking directly toward the body camera now, "I am asking you to explain why I am being treated as a suspect for coming home." Monica had not always lived behind a dark blue door in Arlington. She grew up in a narrow brick duplex in Baltimore, where the radiator knocked through winter nights and her grandmother kept a framed copy of the Constitution on the wall beside family photographs, not because it was perfect, but because she believed a country could be held accountable to its own promises. Monica learned early that words had weight. At 8, she watched her mother read every line of a lease before signing. At 14, she wrote letters for neighbors who could not get landlords to fix heat or mold. At 22, she entered law school with a second-hand laptop, 2 scholarships, and a stubborn belief that justice should not depend on who looked expensive standing at a counter. Years later, that belief had carried her into federal courtrooms, grand jury rooms, and long conference tables where people spoke carefully, because Monica Hayes was the person who knew exactly where a careless sentence could lead. Her days were built from evidence, statutes, witness statements, and the quiet discipline of never raising her voice when the facts were strong enough to stand on their own. That Thursday had been heavy, even before the rain. She had spent 11 hours inside the United States Attorney's Office reviewing a public corruption file, a civil rights referral, and a stack of interview notes that smelled faintly of toner and stale coffee. By the time she shut down her desk lamp, most of the office had gone dark. Her assistant had left a sticky note on her monitor reminding her to eat something that was not vending machine almonds. Monica had smiled at that. packed the black leather work bag with 3 folders she should not have brought home, and walked 6 blocks to the parking garage under a cold drizzle that blurred the city lights into ribbons. She bought dinner from a small market near her street because the kitchen at home held only yogurt, eggs, and a lemon too old to trust. She had imagined nothing more dramatic than dropping the mail on the entry table, taking off her shoes, and standing for 1 peaceful minute in a house that finally belonged to her. She had bought that house after years of saving, years of declining vacations, years of telling herself that one day she would have a porch light of her own. She planted rosemary by the steps. She paid extra to restore the original brass lock. She knew which board in the hallway creaked and which window stuck during humid August nights. And still, standing inches from that lock with rain darkening her coat, Monica understood that ownership could be invisible to people determined not to see it. Officer Brent Collins watched her as if her calmness were another reason to be suspicious. Officer Luke Ramsey stood behind him, body camera blinking, eyes moving from Monica's key to the number beside the door to the grocery bag cutting into her wrist. Monica shifted the bag gently to her other hand and kept her voice even. "My identification is inside my home," she said. "My name is on this property. You can verify that without treating me like I broke into my own life." Officer Brent Collins had answered calls like this long enough to believe the caller before he met the person being called suspicious. That was the habit Monica saw in his face, the quick settling of judgment beneath professional language. Brent was 47, broad through the shoulders, with rain shining on the sleeves of his dark jacket, and a jaw that seemed built to hold one answer at a time. In Arlington, he was known as steady, direct, no-nonsense, the kind of officer neighborhood associations invited to speak after mailbox thefts and car break-ins. He knew which streets had renovated townhomes, which homes had security systems, which residents sent polite emails to the precinct when they saw something they did not understand. He also knew how easily a complaint could arrive, dressed as concern. A voice on the radio had said a woman was lingering near the front door, possibly trying keys, possibly confused, possibly not from the neighborhood. By the time Brent turned onto Monica's street, the porch light was already part of the story in his mind, and Monica was already standing inside that story as the problem. Officer Luke Ramsey had heard the same dispatch, but he had not heard it the same way. Luke was 29, newer to the department, careful in a way that made older officers call him quiet when they meant uncertain. He watched more than he spoke. He noticed the rosemary planters beside Monica's steps, the mail slot polished by use, the house number matching the address from dispatch, the way Monica held the key like someone who had done this 1,000 nights before. He noticed that her work bag was not a backpack or a grocery sack, but a structured leather case heavy with folders. He noticed her words, too. Not loud, not evasive, precise. What is the legal basis? You can verify that. Treating me like I broke into my own life. Luke's body camera blinked beneath his rain jacket, recording the porch from a slight angle, the blue door, the brass lock, Monica's damp coat, Brent on the first step, and the neighbor's curtain across the street shifting again behind warm yellow glass. Brent glanced toward that window as if the unseen neighbor mattered more than the woman in front of him. "We are responding to a call," he said. "That gives me authority to ask questions." Monica nodded once. "It gives you authority to investigate. It does not erase my rights at my front door." Luke looked at Brent then. The sentence had landed cleanly, without insult, but it changed the air. Brent did not like being corrected by anyone. He liked it even less when the correction was accurate. Rain tapped the porch roof in a steady rhythm, dripping from the gutter into the flower bed Monica had planted herself in April. The grocery bag sagged lower in her hand. A drop of water slid from her sleeve onto the wooden porch rail. "Ma'am," Brent said, voice tightening, "most homeowners are eager to clear up misunderstandings." Monica held his gaze. "Most homeowners are not asked to prove they belong while holding their own key." Luke's eyes flicked to the key, then to the camera. Then back to Brent, whose posture had gone still in the way authority does when it feels questioned but cannot yet explain why. Monica did not move toward the lock again. She let the key rest in her palm, bright under the porch light, and turned her body slightly so both officers and both cameras could see her hands, the grocery bag, the black leather work bag, and the space around her. The street behind them stayed quiet except for rain, distant tires on wet pavement, and the soft electric hum of porch lights coming on one by one. "Officer Collins," she said, reading the name stitched on his jacket. "I am going to ask this clearly. Am I being detained?" Brent's eyes narrowed. It was not the question he wanted. It was too clean, too legal, too difficult to fold into the simple story of a suspicious woman at a door. "You are being asked to identify yourself." That is not an answer. Luke Ramsey's gaze dropped for half a second, then lifted again. Brent's jaw set. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." Monica heard the familiar shape of the phrase. It was the language people used when they wanted obedience to sound like peace. She kept her voice level. "No, I am making it precise." The neighbor's curtain across the street moved again. Monica did not look toward it. She refused to give that window the satisfaction of seeing her shrink. She had stood in courtrooms while defense attorneys tried to rattle witnesses, while public officials hid behind polished memory, while powerful men mistook volume for authority. She knew how pressure worked. She knew how quickly a calm black woman could be called hostile if her words made someone uncomfortable. So she chose each sentence the way she chose language for a federal filing: exact, restrained, impossible to honestly misunderstand. "I'm standing at my own front door with my key in my hand," she said. "You received a call. You may verify the address. You may speak to the caller. You may ask reasonable questions. But you have not explained why I am required to produce identification before entering my home." Brent took another step up, still leaving space, but bringing his shadow across the lower half of the door. The brass lock disappeared beneath it. "Because I do not know who you are." Monica looked at the house number beside the frame, then back at him. "That is not the same as reasonable suspicion." Luke's body camera blinked red under his jacket. Brent turned slightly toward him, as if annoyed that the younger officer was hearing too much. "Ramsey, check the call notes." Luke touched his radio, then paused. Dispatch reported a resident concern. "No confirmed entry. No damage. No active emergency." The words sat on the porch colder than the rain. Monica breathed in slowly. Her grocery bag had begun to tear near the handle, the damp paper giving way fiber by fiber. She shifted it carefully onto the porch rail before it broke, then placed the key beside it, metal touching painted wood with a small, clear sound. She did it slowly, openly, with both cameras watching. "There," she said. "My hands are visible. My key is visible. My home is visible. Now please tell me what crime you believe I committed." Brent's face tightened, and for the first time, he had no immediate script to hide inside. Brent's silence lasted only a few seconds, but on that porch it felt long enough for the whole street to lean closer. Rain gathered on the edge of the roof and dropped in steady beads beside the steps. The grocery bag on the rail sagged under its own damp weight, the salad container inside pressing against the paper until the corner began to soften. Monica kept her hands open at her sides, palms visible, shoulders square beneath the camel coat. She had given him every chance to make the moment smaller. He chose to make it larger. "You are being uncooperative," Brent said. The word landed with the dull weight of something prepared before it was earned. Luke Ramsey looked up from his radio. His expression changed, just slightly, because the body camera had recorded the key, the questions, the call notes, the visible hands, and the absence of any emergency. Monica did not blink. "Asking for the legal reason is not uncooperative." Brent took a breath through his nose. "Step away from the door." Monica looked at the dark blue door behind her, then at the key resting on the porch rail. "This is my front door. Step away from it." His voice was lower now, controlled for the camera, but edged with frustration. The neighbor's curtain across the street moved again, wider this time. A second upstairs light turned on next door. Monica could feel unseen eyes collecting the scene without collecting the truth. She had seen that pattern in witness statements for years. how people remembered posture but not words, skin but not context, fear but not who created it. She slowly lifted one hand, not in surrender, but to point with two fingers toward the doorbell camera beside her shoulder. "My camera is recording," she said. "So is Officer Ramsey's." Brent's eyes flicked toward the small blue light. "Good," he said, but the word sounded less certain than he meant it to. Monica reached for the porch rail, only to steady the grocery bag before it tore. Brent's hand rose slightly, not touching her, but stopping the motion with authority. "Do not reach." Monica froze immediately. The bag gave way anyway. The paper handle split with a soft rip, and the salad container slid onto the porch boards. The bottle of sparkling water rolled once, tapped the brass key, and sent it clattering to the welcome mat below. The sound was small, almost delicate, yet every person on that porch heard it. Monica did not bend. She did not sigh. She did not give anger a shape they could photograph. Her black leather work bag shifted on her shoulder as she stayed still, the strap sliding down her coat. A corner of one file folder slipped out, pale against the dark leather, and a sealed government envelope showed just enough of its edge to catch Luke's attention. Brent noticed Luke looking and stepped slightly to block his view. "Ma'am, I am going to ask one more time for identification." Monica's voice remained quiet. "And I am going to ask one more time for the lawful basis." The rain softened for a moment, leaving the porch full of tiny sounds. Water in the gutter, the bottle rocking against the rail, Luke's body camera blinking, the neighbor's window closing too late. Brent looked at Monica as though her calmness had become the offense. "You people always want to argue procedure." The sentence left his mouth and changed the night. Luke's head snapped toward him. Monica's face did not move, but something in her eyes became colder than the rain. She looked directly at the body camera and said, "Please make sure that statement is preserved." The sentence did not echo loudly, but it stayed. It hung beneath the porch roof with the rainwater and the porch light and the quiet blue blink of the doorbell camera, heavier than anything Brent Collins had said all night, because it had finally given shape to what Monica had felt from the first command. Luke Ramsey did not speak. His eyes remained on Brent for half a second too long, and in that half second the balance on the porch shifted. Brent seemed to realize it too. His face tightened, not with regret yet, but with the anger of a man who understood that his own words had stepped outside the protection of procedure. Monica stood perfectly still. The broken grocery bag lay open near the rail. The salad container had landed on its side, the clear lid fogged with rain. The bottle of sparkling water rested against the welcome mat, gently rocking whenever a drop from the gutter struck the boards nearby. Her brass key lay beside it, bright and ordinary. Inches from the door it had opened hundreds of times before. She wanted to pick it up. She wanted to turn the lock, step inside, set her files on the entry table, take off her damp shoes, and let the house be what she had worked so hard for it to be. Shelter. Silence. Hers. Instead, she kept both hands visible and let the moment breathe. Her grandmother had once told her that dignity was not the same as comfort. Sometimes dignity meant standing in the cold, long enough for truth to stop hiding. Monica remembered that now as rain gathered on the ends of her hair and slid down the collar of her camel coat. Across the street, the neighbor's curtain had stopped moving. The whole block seemed to be listening through glass. Brent glanced toward Luke's camera again. "That is not what I meant," he said. Monica's voice was calm. "Then the recording will show what you said." Luke lowered his chin slightly, not a nod exactly, but close enough for Monica to understand that he had heard her. Brent exhaled through his nose and looked toward the key on the mat. "Pick it up slowly," he said, trying to take command of a silence that no longer belonged to him. Monica did not bend right away. She looked at Luke first. "For the record, I am retrieving my house key from my own welcome mat," Luke answered quietly. "Understood." She crouched with careful patience, one hand extended, the other away from her body, every movement measured beneath the cameras. The porch boards were cold against her fingertips when she touched the key. At that same moment, the strap of her black leather work bag slipped farther down her shoulder. One folder slid out another inch. A sealed envelope followed, then a hard plastic corner caught the porch light from inside the open side pocket. Monica felt it shift but did not reach for it. Luke's eyes dropped. Brent's did too. Neither man spoke. The plastic edge gleamed under the yellow light, not fully revealed yet, but official enough to change the air. Monica rose slowly with the key in her hand, and for the first time that night, Brent Collins looked at her as if the woman standing before him might be someone he should have bothered to recognize before he decided she did not belong. Luke Ramsey saw the card before Brent fully understood what it was. It had slid halfway from the side pocket of Monica's work bag, a hard plastic credential in a clear sleeve, its upper edge catching the porch light with a dull government sheen. At first, only the seal was visible, blurred by rain and shadow. Then the folder beneath it shifted, and the words came into view one line at a time. United States Attorney, District of Columbia, Monica Elaine Hayes. Luke's face changed so quickly that Monica noticed before Brent did. The younger officer's mouth parted, then closed again, as if training had failed to provide a sentence for the moment when the person being questioned at her own door turned out to be someone who spent her life enforcing the law they had just handled carelessly. Brent looked down at the credential, then up at Monica, then back again. The porch light seemed brighter now. The rain sounded thinner. Across the street, the curtain vanished from the window as if the unseen neighbor had suddenly understood that watching was no longer harmless. Monica did not reach for the card. She let it remain where it was, half exposed, because the truth did not need to be snatched into the open. It only needed to be seen. Luke stepped slightly forward, careful and respectful. "Officer Collins," he said quietly, "dispatch should verify the homeowner through property records." Brent's jaw moved, but no words came out. His radio crackled softly at his shoulder before he touched it. A dispatcher's voice came through, faint but clear beneath the rain. "Unit 14, update on Arlington address. Homeowner listed as Monica Hayes. Additional note from Federal Liaison Database, same name associated with United States Attorney's Office." The silence after that was different from every silence before it. It was not uncertainty anymore. It was consequence. Brent's face lost its hard edges in small pieces, not into apology, not yet, but into the shock of a man who had built authority on assumption and watched one verified fact break the frame around him. Monica finally lifted the credential from her bag with 2 fingers and held it at chest level, not pushing it toward him, not performing power, just allowing him to read what he should have never needed in order to treat her with respect. "My identification," she said, "since you demanded it." Luke looked down. Brent looked at the card, then at the door, then at the key in Monica's hand. The brass key, the grocery bag, the porch rail, the blue camera light, the body camera on Luke's chest. All of it suddenly seemed to testify. Monica's voice stayed even. "For the record, I was standing at my own home. I asked for the legal basis. I kept my hands visible. I identified the cameras recording this interaction. Officer Collins referred to me with a phrase that needs to be preserved exactly." Luke nodded once, this time clearly. "Yes, ma'am." The words "ma'am" sounded different now, stripped of command and returned to respect. Brent swallowed. "Miss Hayes, there may have been a misunderstanding." Monica looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said softly. "A misunderstanding is when the facts are unclear. Here, the facts were available. You chose suspicion first." The rain eased as she said it, leaving the porch covered in small, shining traces, and Brent Collins stood under the light with nothing left to hide behind except the recording. Brent Collins opened his mouth as if apology might arrive by habit, but the porch gave him no easy place to put it. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, leaving silver beads along the rail and dark patches on the wooden boards around Monica's fallen dinner. The salad container sat on its side. The bottle of sparkling water rested against the welcome mat. The brass key lay in Monica's palm now, warm from her hand, while her federal credential remained visible against her coat, not raised like a weapon, not hidden like a secret, simply present. Luke Ramsey stood beside the walkway with his shoulders lowered, the body camera on his chest still recording, and for the first time that night his silence felt less like hesitation and more like witness. Brent shifted his weight on the step. "Miss Hayes," he said carefully, "we were responding to a resident concern." Monica looked toward the house across the street, where the curtain had gone still. "A concern is not a license to forget the Constitution." Brent's eyes dropped. Luke reached for his notebook, then stopped and activated his radio instead. "Dispatch, please create a full incident record for this call. Include homeowner verification, body camera activation, and request supervisor review." Brent turned toward him, surprised. Luke kept his voice even. "Also note that the resident requested preservation of the recording." The radio crackled, then confirmed. Monica watched the younger officer without softening completely. Respect given late was still late, but it mattered when someone chose the record over the habit. Brent cleared his throat. "I regret the phrasing I used." Monica's face remained calm. "Regret is not the same as accountability." The words were quiet enough to belong to the porch, but heavy enough to pass through every camera listening. Brent nodded once, stiffly. Understood. Monica placed her credential back into the side pocket of her work bag and adjusted the strap on her shoulder. She did not need to explain what her office did. She did not need to recite statutes under her own roofline. She had spent too many years watching people in power believe a title was the only language they had to respect. Tonight had proven the opposite. The law should have protected the woman with the grocery bag before it recognized the federal prosecutor. Luke stepped back from the walkway. "Miss Hayes, would you like the incident number sent to you tonight?" "Yes," Monica said. "And I want the body camera footage preserved according to department policy, not overwritten, not clipped, not summarized." Luke nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Brent looked at the blue door, the rosemary planters, the welcome mat, and the key in Monica's hand, as if each ordinary detail had become evidence against the story he brought with him. Monica finally turned the key in the lock. The brass clicked softly, a small domestic sound that felt larger than the commands that had tried to stop it. Before stepping inside, she looked back at both officers. "When the law is used carelessly," she said, "it stops feeling like protection." Neither man answered. There was nothing useful left to say until their reports matched what the cameras had already seen. Inside the house, the quiet felt almost unfamiliar. Monica closed the door gently, not because she was afraid to make sound, but because she refused to let the night teach her hands to slam. The brass lock turned with a soft click behind her. For a moment, she stood in the entryway without moving, still holding the damp grocery bag by what remained of its torn handle, still wearing the camel coat darkened by rain, still feeling the porch light through the frosted glass beside the door. Her house smelled faintly of rosemary, old books, and lemon cleaner. The hallway board near the stairs creaked when she shifted her weight, the same small sound that usually made her feel at home. Tonight, it sounded like proof. She set the ruined salad container on the entry table, placed the bottle of sparkling water beside it, and laid her federal credential flat next to the key. The three objects sat under the warm lamp like a quiet record of the evening. Dinner interrupted, identity demanded, home questioned. Outside, Brent Collins remained on the porch for several seconds after the door closed. He stared at the blue door as if the wood itself had refused him. Luke Ramsey stood near the walkway, rain beating on his jacket, one hand resting near the body camera on his chest. The red light still glowed. Across the street, the neighbor's living room light went dark. No apology came from that window. No curtain opened with regret. The street returned to its polished silence, but it was not the same silence Monica had come home to. Luke looked at Brent and said, quietly, "The report needs to include the statement exactly." Brent did not answer at first. His face was pale beneath the porch light, his authority thinned by the recording, the credential, and the ordinary truth of a woman standing at her own door. "I know," he said finally, but the words sounded less like agreement than defeat. Later that night, Monica sat at her kitchen table with a mug of tea cooling between her hands. She had changed out of the damp coat, but the cold had not fully left her shoulders. Her work bag rested on the chair beside her, files still inside, waiting for morning. She opened her laptop and did not write a complaint in anger. She wrote it the way she wrote everything that mattered, clearly, carefully, with dates, times, badge numbers, exact language, and no sentence stronger than the facts required. When she finished, she looked toward the front hall. The porch light was still on. Through the narrow window, she could see rain sliding down the glass in thin silver lines. The next morning, the rosemary by the steps shone with water, and the welcome mat had dried unevenly around the place where her key had fallen. Monica stepped onto the porch in a dark suit, her work bag over her shoulder, her credential secured inside but no longer heavy. A department supervisor had already called. The footage had been preserved. The incident report had been opened for review. Officer Ramsey's statement matched the recording. Officer Collins had been reassigned pending evaluation of the complaint. Monica listened, thanked the supervisor for the information, and ended the call without triumph. She looked across the street at the closed curtains, then back at her own door. The blue paint glowed softly in the morning light. She touched the brass lock once, not for reassurance, but as a reminder that belonging should never require an audience, a title, or a badge to be believed. Then Monica Hayes walked down the steps toward her car, the neighborhood quiet around her, the porch camera above the door blinking once in the sun, like a small witness still awake after justice had finally found its way home.